Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Okay, welcome back to a new week. So we'll get started for today's live stream over here as well. So first thing first, of course, some housekeeping, right? Quick disclaimer. Things that we'll be covering in today's session are solely based on my personal opinion. It doesn't directly constitute to any form of trade signals or investment advisory. Okay, and of course, trading in the financial market involves risks. Okay, so I want to very quickly point out that obviously, from time to time there always be some scam fake accounts using my username, my profile, my photo to set up groups, on various social media platforms, whether is it on Instagram, Facebook, or even Telegram. And they tend to reach out to the public to ask for funds, and get you to join some kind of an investment scheme or plans, any sort of such things, or just be very vigilant and careful. Those are definitely not me, right? I would never reach out to you individually, privately, to ask for any form of funds management or etc. Okay. So if you kind of receive any of these messages, just feel free to, of course, just report and kind of like ban or exit the group. Okay. So with that said, let's jump into the market for this week. Okay, so as usual, we'll run through some of the events to take note of. I'll quickly scan through the markets, share with you some of the opportunities. Okay, and we'll kind of wrap up this session with a short Q&A as well. Okay. Now this week over here, if you take a look at Monday, which is today, we do have the US and the Canadian bank holiday, so likely we're not gonna see any move in the market anyway. Then tomorrow we do have the Canadian CPI data coming in. So again, CPI data are important. Okay, we have actually observed the CPI data as of last week in terms of the US side, giving us a nice low move, right? So that's gonna create volatility in the market, and nothing surprised. I think the Canadians things would probably also give us some kind of nice little volatility. So if you're into kind of news trading, tomorrow 9:30 the cat would probably give you some potential opportunities, right, for short-term news. Then we have the Wednesday. We do have the Australian wage price index. For me, I'm not really too concerned about that. I don't think it's gonna be like huge movement in the market. Okay, on Thursday we have a couple of Euro PMIs coming in. So these are quite common. I don't think it's gonna be major movement as well, right? Unless we're gonna see like huge deviation. But most of the time, PMIs from the Euro side of things are not likely gonna give you much things. Okay. Then we have the pound flash services PMI, right? So in terms of the UK side of things, the service PMI is definitely one of the most important PMI compared to maybe manufacturing. Okay. Similar here in the US, right? So if you're taking note on the PMI data for the UK and the US, always look out for services. Okay, they carry a little bit more weight as compared to others. So other than that, Friday we don't really have much things. Okay, so this week, relatively, there are less important data as compared to last week. To me, I think the primary focus, if you're into news trading, is gonna be very much on the Canadian side. Okay, so do look out for that. Okay, so that's a very quick one in terms of the data and the news event, right? So it's again important because if you are trading certain specific currencies, for example, I'm looking at dollar cat. Okay, then you need to be aware, right? Because if I'm looking at dollar cat, I'm interested to trade the dollar cat. Then I need to understand. All right, tomorrow we have a news catalyst that may um, potentially shift the entire structure, because whenever there's a major surprise in the news, prices tends to move impulsively, and that can actually break and shift structure. Okay. So with that said, let's very quickly take a look at the dollar index, right? So dollar index over here, short term, I'm expecting one more push. Okay. So from a structure perspective, we do have this as a 1, 2, 3, completing the blue. Consolidation here, so that's where we look at it from a perspective of the X wave. Okay, and we're looking at potentially another 3 wave up, right? WXY to complete the bigger structure WXY as well. Okay, And of course, we are also having price respecting the channel so far. Okay, so as long as I think price continue to respect that, we can anticipate further upside for the dollar itself. Okay, so that means short term, if we can see the dollar index continue to bounce higher towards 105.6, 105.95, then we can look at some of the major pairs here with dollar strength. Okay, so DXY kind of give me a bigger picture perspective, kind of like potentially an alignment when we look at some of the major pairs, right? So dollar here, I'm remaining bullish for now. However, having said that, if the market actually break impulsively below this trend line structure, then we need to be cautious, right? Because this can still be counted as a completed three wave and we may experience a bigger pullback. Okay, so be adaptive to what the market is telling you. Okay, and of course, don't get overly fixated with your own personal view, right? Always update it in terms of what the market is telling us. Okay, so euro dollar, potentially we are then looking for a little bit more downside as well, right? If the dollar index is likely gonna hit higher, then there's a very good chance the euro dollar would hit a little bit lower. So same thing over here, right? The market is kind of getting close towards the top of the channel. I mean, even if it breaks it, right? As long as it doesn't break out impulsively, okay? If it breaks out just something like this, I'm not too concerned over in terms of the directional bias. I would still maintain bearish bias and still look for the sell side of things. Okay, the only thing that would change my bias from bearish to perhaps a little bit more on the neutral and looking for a reversal to the upside is when the market is able to take up this structure and it takes it up with momentum, right? So if you're gonna go up impulsively, that's where I'm gonna be starting to be cautious and potentially shift towards neutral and bullishness. Okay, but for now, I think the higher probability directional bias I'm still focusing is due to the downside. Right, pound dollar over here, overall I'm neutral. Okay, but last week, for those of you who are also monitoring this, we kind of managed to catch a very nice little short-term trade. Okay, hitting our full targets as well. But for the larger time frame perspective, overall it's still neutral. Okay, the reason is because it's not a simple pattern over here, right? It's pretty complex. But very quickly, right? Since we're on this, I'll just show you if I still have it. Not sure if I remove the drawing. Yeah, so it's still here, right? So that's the setup that we're looking at last Friday. Okay, very nice little bullish structure. We have the demand zone and the market came back, tag our entry, hits our target for a nice little 2.5 raise to reward ratio, right? One of the easiest trade last week. Not much of a drawdown, and the trade managed to resolve within the day itself, right? So you can see, on a larger time frame perspective, we are actually trading this move here, right? So it's a little bit aggressive, as I've actually mentioned in the trade plan, right? It's definitely a little bit more aggressive, because the overall structure is still very much neutral. It's not the clearest of all, okay? But sometimes we can still catch some short-term opportunity. Okay, but for this week here, I think it's best to just be patient, give some time for the market to evolve, and when we get a clearer directional bias, then we can commit to that trade. Okay, for now, there's nothing much over there. Then we have the Aussie dollar as well. Okay, so Aussie dollar right now, I'm a little bit on the bearish side of things because I'm carrying the bias actually from the dollar index, right? So the dollar index is bullish, and therefore we're looking at Aussie dollar being bearish. Okay, the thing here, of course, we also want to keep track, how market is going to develop from here on, right? Understand that we also have the Aussie wage data on Wednesday. Again, ideally, we want to see some kind of an impulsive drop, right? And even if the market continues to move higher, we want to see price move higher correctively, and it shouldn't go impulsive. Okay, so some of this here, for example, the euro dollar as well as the Aussie dollar, while I'm having a clear directional bias as of now, okay, we need to be very flexible to quickly pivot when price starts to indicate, that they are likely developing into another structure, another pattern. We need to quickly adapt to that as well. Okay, but I'm showing you the based on what we have right now, okay, this is the directional focus I'm looking into, okay, to the downside. Now, for me, one of the clearer major paths for the week would likely come from the dollar Canadian. Okay, so dollar Canadian over here as of now, okay, managed to put in a high at 1.3585, and last week we kind of see a little bit of an impulsive drop, right? So we kind of have a little bit of what we call a V-shaped formation. So moving forward in this week, if you can see a corrective structure over here, naturally I'll be interested in the sell with the first target around 1.3380, right? So 1.3380 is going to be very nice little confluence where the previous low is. Now obviously this can go lower in that, okay, but for now the first target that we'll look out for is around 1.3380. Now this is a little bit on the counter side of things because just now we look at the dollar index and kind of mentioned that the dollar index potentially is bullish, right? But dollar Canadian over here, we're looking at a potential sell setup. Okay, so for me, whenever I approach the markets, right, I look at them as individual asset. Then only I add in the element of intermarket correlation, right? If you want to put it that way. So dollar CAD chart is very obviously showing the possibility of a downside, right? Given if this is going to be corrective, as I mentioned, the odds of this coming down is significantly higher than continue to the upside, okay, given that we have a corrective structure, okay. So I'm still going to be focusing on the sell, okay, but of course, understanding that if this is likely going to come down, there's only two possible reasons, right? One is that the dollar is going to be weakened, or number two, the Canadian is going to be significantly stronger than the dollar, right? The dollar may strengthen, but if the Canadian is going to be significantly stronger than the dollar, then dollar Canadian can still move lower. Okay, so you need to understand that relationship, right? So it doesn't mean that the dollar index going higher and then the dollar Canadian cannot go down, right? Because there's also the other factor, which is the Canadian side of things. Okay, so this is one of the potential setup that I'm monitoring, but of course today I don't expect any movement because the US side is on holiday, the Canadian side is also on holiday, and of course, it's Monday, right? Monday market is just slow. Okay, I see a question here, right? Can this dollar Canadian retrace back to the previous top, then only drop? Okay, so the question is, if this were to retrace all the way back, okay. Now I'll phrase the question a little bit differently, right? I think it's important to, psychologically, it's very important to phrase questions correctly as well, right? I mean, because if you ask, for example, right, the question is, can this retrace back, then only drop, versus a question of what if the price actually retrace up, right? The reason is because the word can or cannot in trading, can this happen, or can that happen? When you use the word can or cannot, okay, the answer is always yes, it might, it can, right? That's the possibility that it can, right? Because again, I always stress, the market is basically a probability thing, right? You want to look at the market in a probabilistic mindset, okay? So when you're looking at it and you're approaching the market in a probabilistic mindset, the answer to questions of whether can or cannot is always, yeah, it might, right? It can, okay? So I would phrase this a little bit, okay? And of course, it's very important to to train yourself to ask questions in a phrase that would benefit and kind of like train your muscle memory into thinking in terms of probability, right? So instead of using keywords like can or cannot, change it a little bit, right? I think to what if, right? So actually, you also answer your questions, right? I mean, I would assume that you're asking, if this goes back up here, would I still be looking to sell, right? So you can see that just by changing that wording, it would help you to shift your entire perspective in the market, okay? So I would answer it in terms of, assuming the question is, what if price actually goes back all the way to this top? Okay, would I still look to sell, right? I think that would be a more, to me, it's definitely more, I would say, helpful question to ask, right? And I think it's important as well. Okay, so it's kind of like a little bit of what we call a scenario planning, right? So my ideal situation over here is for the market to do a simple correction and then we'll look for a sell, right? But of course, the market doesn't always do what we want, right? So the thing here is if this just keeps continuing to develop correctively all the way, and even maybe breaking this a little bit, okay, would this still be a valid bearish bias? Okay, my answer to that is given this is gonna go correctively, I would still hold a overall bearish bias. But of course, the direction itself is just the one pillar, right? We still need the setup to commit to the trade, right? So if this continue to go correctively, even if it breaks that top, I would still be bearish bias. Okay, I would probably not be too keen in buying it. Now, the only thing that would shift my potential bias is if we see an impulsive move back up. Following that, a corrective structure here, then short term this may continue to push higher. Okay, then the bias may change, right? So it's also another element to consider, right? It's not just about the price point, but it's also more on how, okay, how the price actually reach there if it's gonna go to the top. All right, so I hope that kind of helps. Okay, so that lingo that you use, I think is very important. Okay, because if you use it sufficiently, right, because it's kind of like a routine. Okay, if you use it sufficiently, it helps to train the mindset to think in terms of probability. Okay, then we have the Aussie yen. Now Aussie yen here, short term, we may see a little bit of an upside. Okay, based on just FIP expectation. If you're expecting a 5-wave move here, potentially you can go towards that 618 extension. But I'm basically neutral, right? The reason is because I'm not too keen to buy this up. Okay, the upside potential may be limited. I'll be more interested, if I want to trade a trend, I'll be more interested to wait for a deeper and more meaningful correction before I look to buy. Alternatively, of course, if you can see a reversal sign, we can also capitalize on the pullback, okay? Because the market has actually moved up quite significantly. Um, every time it has moved a certain extended move, I will always expect a deeper pullback. Okay, and obviously I wouldn't want to be buying at the top, right? So for that reason, on dollar yen, I would be more cautious. Okay, to the upside, I'll be more interested to the downside. Okay, and then in terms of gold here, I'm definitely more interested in the upside, right? I think based on this drawing here, I think it's quite obvious. We get a very nice little bounce off the low of this parallel channel. Very nice little 3-wave structure here as well, completed, and then we get a very nice impulsive rejection to the upside. Okay, now gold, I'm definitely bullish bias, right? So all we need to wait for right now is a setup. Okay, the direction is clear, the bias is clear, all we need is a setup, right? So for me, a decent setup is wait for a corrective pullback. That would give me the setup to look for the buy. Now the upside on gold is huge, right? Of course, one of the more conservative way of looking at it, okay, would be to take an equal length projection, and that will put me around a target at 2,100 level, right? 2100. But of course, to be more conservative, you can even aim for, if I can extend this a little bit here, you can aim for the top of the channel, right? The risk reward would definitely be worthwhile if you kind of play around with multi-time frame entry setups. You can look for previous high here, and of course the final target, going up to as high as 2100s. Okay, so gold for the week, likely bullish. Okay, the only thing here is of course wait for the setup to come to you, then you can look for the buy trade opportunity. Okay, then we have crude oil. Crude oil is looking bullish as well, but with the current development, okay, it does seem like we may continue to push a little bit higher. But this is what we call a cross structure, right? So I would not want to be buying the market here, right? Because number one, this looks corrective. Number two, we're getting close towards the top of this channel. If I want to buy, I want to wait for the price to come down here before entering. Okay. Now, would I be looking at a sell around this area? At this moment, not yet. Okay. The reason for that is, again, a little bit contextual aspect of things, right? This little move is our very first impulse move following that across, okay? So from Elliott Wave perspective, this can be a leading diagonal for a pullback and a continuation back up. Okay. Just like what we see over here, right? You can see this first move up, correction, pullback, and then a continuation back up. Okay. So that's the context, right? But of course, the same pattern, if it appears in another context, then we'll be looking for the reversal sign. Okay, but for now, crude oil here, I'm more into looking for, I would say, even waiting for the pullback to commit to the buy side of things, right? I'm not so keen in selling crude oil based on this structure. Okay, so I think this week, unlikely you're gonna get any setup because we want to be patient and wait for the pullback. It's gonna take time for it to develop, and unlikely you're gonna get a trade. Unlikely you're gonna get a trade this week, okay, on crude oil. Then next up we have the S&P 500, or in general the US market. Okay, so S&P over here, I'm neutral. Okay, likely this is a little bit complex, you know, but this can easily come back down before the next move up. Okay, it can also do a more significant pullback. Okay, so for those reasons, okay, I would say you just don't want to commit too much of your resources on the US market as of now, right? The best thing to do for me is to just leave this aside, come back, you know, when things gets clearer, right? I mean, we do have other opportunities to pay attention to, right? Namely the dollar Canadian, even the gold trade. I think that's better opportunities to focus compared to the S&P. Okay. Then very quickly, this one here in pound yen, also neutral. Not the best pattern, not the clearest pattern to be committing to a particular direction, so I'm just going to be neutral on that. Aussie yen here, we're bullish. Okay, but of course I want to wait for the pullback. The pullback may take some time, right? So this one here, if we get the pullback, the best possible time to be looking for it is probably going to be next week instead of this week. Okay, so this is again something I won't commit too much resources into. Pound Australia is something that I'm also into and interested. Okay, again, you can see this is the structure that we talk about in terms of reversal. Okay, we have a crawl, we have the first push down. If we can get a correction here, I'll be interested in the sell. Okay, so it's a very clear structure, right? We have the crawl, we have our first sign of a reversal, we wait for the correction, we commit to that sell trade. Okay, so Pound Australia, clear opportunities within the week as well. Okay, so again, if you look at those that I've tagged out, those are the things that I'm interested in. Okay. Euro Canadian, I'm neutral on this. Again, very ugly and complex pattern over here. Okay, we kind of got a crawl here, but we don't get an impulsive move. What we're getting here is a corrective development, right? So not something I will want to commit too much time to as well, right? So I'm just going to be neutral, be patient, let the market play out. We'll come back next week on Euro Canadian. Okay, BTC over here, definitely bullish. There's no reason to be selling the Bitcoin right now. Okay, we get a very strong momentum move. So the current label that I have is basically 1, 2, 3, and then we're expecting wave 4. And if you can get a corrective pullback for wave 4, I'm interested to trade this to the upside. Okay, now for those of you who are not aware, we do have a Bitcoin halving coming in this year, somewhere around April and May period, right? Historically, the past halving, Bitcoin prices shoot up post halving. Okay, that means after April, after May. Historically, during the previous halving, Bitcoin prices shoot up. Now, does it mean that it's gonna shoot up this time round? Not 100%, but there's a higher probability, right? Because based on historical pattern, that's what it happens, right? But of course, from an Elliott Wave perspective, right, this can still come back down, go back up, and we can still see a deeper pullback going into April, May, before the major rally. Okay, so from Elliott Wave perspective, if we are going to trade this up, you don't want to be just buying and holding the entire move, right? You want to be buying and then taking profits. If this is going to pull back, you look for a buy again to ride perhaps the halving event. Okay, but having said all that, I think this week here we're likely going to see that pullback very similar to the Aussie yen. Okay, so unlikely you're going to get anything on Bitcoin this week. Okay, because if this is going to pull back correctively, it needs time. And looking at the expectation of this, there's a very good chance this trade will only come to us next week. Okay. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I would like to touch on. Okay. Very quickly, I see some of you guys are asking certain pairs like Kiwi Yen and Aussie Kiwi, right? So let's very quickly take a look at the Kiwi Yen. So Kiwi Yen over here, not something to, I mean, the number one thing I see over here is this is slightly developing a 5-way move, okay? So we are bullish. There's no reason to be selling it, but you want to always wait for the decent pullback before commit to the buy. Okay, so again, very similar to Aussie Yen. Probably no setup this week, okay? But the direction overall is pretty clear cut. Aussie New Zealand. Aussie New Zealand over here, based on this recent development, okay, one of the closest part it can monitor would be this, okay? So market is currently testing that 50 and 618 area. What a pattern possibly developing is this is the first move up, 1, 2, 3, expanding flat structure. And then we may see one more push back up, okay? Now, you may want to look out for the buy trade opportunity, but that's definitely a near-term, short-term potential trade. Okay, because the reason is, of course, you know, we can see the market is coming down quite significantly, right? I mean, it's still breaking low and low. So, again, the market is not moving all the time in one direction, right? So short term, we may get something like this. You may consider to look out for opportunities, of course, based on whatever buy setups or I would say trading conditions and criteria that you're looking out for. But my first primary projection is to look out for a buy opportunity, and then after that, potentially a sell trade opportunity, depending on how market is going to react, right, as it goes up. Okay, so that's my take on Aussie New Zealand. But of course, if the market just keeps falling down, right, without any kind of a setup to allow you to buy, then you don't just jump into the trade blindly. Okay, because the momentum as of now is still down, it's still bearish, right? Any buy trade here, as I mentioned, is just basically trading the correction. It's short term. Yeah. Euro Australia. Okay. For me, Euro Australia, I'm bearish. Okay, I think this one here, not much of an update. I think overall it's still pretty much the same. Okay, I would say Euro Australia still look pretty bearish as of now. Okay, not the cleanest pattern of all, right? Obviously, the recent development here is not clean, but we were expecting this as a 1, 2, 3, right? So what would be some kind of a confirmation, right, is for the market to actually ideally either do a correction here to give you that little short impulse correction combination for that trade to continue lower, or you see a continuation of a impulsive move and then you wait for the correction. Okay, so that's my take, right? The general direction, the primary directional bias is still bearish for the Euro Australia side. Okay, what about the Euro Pound? Okay, okay, I don't trade the Euro Pound, right? But let's just take a look. Okay, let me just clean up everything. Okay, right now, what we have is the market seems to give us our very first impulsive bounce. indicating a potential reversal, right? I mean, the market has been coming down quite a bit. Okay, we have some lack of momentum, a little bit of a crawlish structure there. We have our first impulsive move. We managed to take out this high, but the thing that I'm a little bit careful is we did not take out that high. Okay. So of course, right, that would put for me, okay, that would put any potential buy trade as a aggressive entry technique. Okay, because we haven't really taken off this, right? So it's still considered to me an early sign of a potential reversal, right? Not a confirmed potential trend yet. Okay. So what I'll be looking out for in terms of direction is definitely bullish bias. Okay, but of course you want to be careful because, as I mentioned, any buy trade here will be seen as a aggressive entry approach. Okay, because this high hasn't been broken. Right, but that's the take on Euro Pound. Okay, I would be focusing on the upside. If you're okay with being a bit more aggressive in an entry, then yeah, look out for areas around the 50 and 618. Okay, Kiwi dollar will potentially look quite similar to Aussie. This is just not the best area to be trading, right? It's very range bound. I would not even spend time, really looking at this. Okay, I don't like this kind of pattern structure, right? Because when we're in a extended consolidated range environment, it's not easy to identify the directional bias, and therefore I wouldn't be focusing too much on this kind of things. Okay. Very quickly, some index over here. First one is A50, which is the China index. So A50, okay, the market has been hitting higher, but right now this is very obvious. Okay, this is a very obvious crawl. Okay, and of course we already see the market also potentially completing this as a three-wave move, right? WXY. Okay, not really a parallel channel, but it's a three-wave completed structure, right? So what I will be looking out for over here, okay, I'll put in a little bit of a notation. Okay, what I'll be looking out for is to, okay, depending again on the style and the approach, right? If you're more of a counter trend short term, you may consider a lookout for an opportunity to trade a retracement. Okay, if you're more of a trend continuation, then you want to wait and see how the price is potentially retracing, right? If it's going to come down correctively, then this opens up a buy trade opportunity. Okay, if you're looking at a counter trend, then obviously you want to wait for a little bit more of an impulsive correction here, then take the sell trade down. Okay, yeah, so that's on A50, right? So in terms of Hang Seng over here, slightly different from the A50, right? So Hang Seng here, I think this structure still remains intact. Yeah. Yeah, so this structure still remains intact. One thing to note, of course, I would be a little bit more conservative. Okay, it may not move as high. Again, the parallel channel. Let me just draw that in and see how it goes. Okay. I mean, the parallel channels is not the most important aspect, right? Again, it's a visual thing. So what can happen over here is this potentially will go up a little bit more. Or of course, this can come down. Okay, let me just draw it. Okay, this can come down a little bit more to kind of develop a corrective piece for one more pushback up. And then after that, this may start to move lower as well. Okay, so it really depends on how the market is going to move forward. But short term over here, the projection that I'm seeing is basically 1, 2, and of course 3 here, right? And internally, this may be a three-way move. Okay. So if this is going to develop correctively, then there's a good chance this may come down and retest the bottom. Okay. So as I mentioned, you want to see how the markets are going to play out from there. But short term, this can so you have a little bit of a room to go. Naturally, if it's me, I won't be so keen in buying this. Okay, I'll be more interested in Hang Seng, in A50, to see if I can get an aggressive trade to the downside, if it's me, right? Because A50 and Hang Seng, again, they are a little bit correlated, right? So I'll probably choose one to focus on. Okay, UK 100, the FTSE. Good, so we can't get an impulsive move. I'm gonna update that projection. So FTSE would likely look something like this. Seems like we're kind of testing the top already, right? Yeah, okay, almost there. Okay, so if I take away the parallel channel, just focusing on the fits, okay, we are getting quite near the 100%, so we're kind of expecting the momentum to continue through. But again, once it tagged this area, we always expect a deeper pullback before potentially a trend continuation. Okay. So again, that's the projection, right? So if you ask me, is this a buy? Probably not. Okay, because we're getting very close to the top, right? So the profit potential may not be worthwhile. Okay, yeah, so that's my take on the FTSE. Okay, in terms of Australia, ASX. Seems like we don't really have much now. Okay, I mean, ideally you want to see a market break that, right? Because that's obviously a significant high. Okay, and this can develop into a crawl. Okay, if this develops into a crawl, then potentially a double top for the move down, right? So I'll be neutral on this. Okay, I'll be neutral on this. I want to see how the market's gonna react off this significant high. Okay, if it's a crawl, potentially a double top. If this can break up impulsively, then form a correction, then of course the buy would be higher probability. But buying here may not be the best trade yet. Okay, yeah. So that's on the Aussie side of things. Okay. Okay. NASDAQ, you may want to look out for a simple three-wave pullback first before any buy, right? So likely something like this might develop, right? So bullish, short term maybe a little bit of a sell side, but overall still bullish on the NASDAQ. Okay. Dow Jones here, quite different pattern, okay, but I would say you also want to wait for the pullback first. Correctively, you want to see a pullback, then you can look for upside. Okay, also be aware of this top, right? You haven't really taken that level off, so this can still develop into a double top structure and eventually still come back down. Okay. Silver. Okay, I would focus more on gold than silver, okay, because silver tech. Okay, this is quite a huge area, right? But you can see basically that's a reaction off there. And of course silver, we have this bottom here, right? So between silver and gold, I would say gold has a clearer structure, okay? Because gold very obviously broke that bottom, V-shaped up. Okay, if you can get a correction, it's very clear in terms of the structure that gold is developing. Okay, but if I go over to silver, okay, we're kind of we're rejecting off that top, right? So if this comes down correctively, it's not as nice as gold because this can still go back up, form a mini double top, and this can still come down, right? Yeah, so gold and silver, they're very, very closely correlated, but the structure that's developing on gold is way clearer than silver. Okay, silver I'm a little bit cautious right now. Okay, yeah, so that's my take. Okay, pound Canadian, definitely not focusing on this, right? Again, the market is basically doing a sideways move. I mentioned this, right? Every time you see the market in a range environment, not the best possible trade. Okay, in Elliott Wave, this is developing into a more complex corrective structure, and it's not easy to manage it, right? So every time I see something like that, my suggestion is always just put them aside. Okay. Same thing with this. Okay. I think generally some of these crosses here, right? You want to just put them aside first. Okay. Yeah. So things like pound cat, okay, Aussie cat, you definitely just want to put them aside. Okay. Euro cat as well, right? So you can see the crosses in terms of the cats. Um, they're not the cleanest of all, right? So just put them aside. Okay. Come back another time. Okay. Last two here I see is the Aussie Kiwi and the Euro. Sorry, the Euro Kiwi and the pound, right? Okay, so in terms of pound Kiwi, this is what I'm seeing. Now, depending on how complex this is going to develop, right? If this just decides to come down and then hit the 100%, obviously we'll be looking for potential bounce. Okay, the alternative over here is this may actually decide to go back up correctively. If it does, then we can still get a short-term sell opportunity. Okay, we can still look for a sell option. So it really depends on how market develop, but the current market structure I'm seeing is this pattern. Okay, so if I extend this a little bit. Okay, so labeling wise, I would put it as this is a three-wave move, right? And of course, this may be developing into another three-wave move, and overall, we have a bigger degree three-wave move, right? So that would be what I'll be looking out for. Okay, and obviously some annotation, that would be a significant swing point. Right, so that's on the pound New Zealand side of things. The Euro Kiwi. Okay, so this was done previously as well. Probably more or less the same as pound side, right? Yeah, I'll put it like this. Okay. So pound cat seems to have a little bit more room to the downside, right? So this would look something like that. Okay, so Euro Kiwi, the downside potential is not a lot, right? I mean, you only have a little bit left here based on this fib areas. Pound New Zealand seems, you know, given if this forms, of course, the correction, right? You have bigger profit potential. Okay, so again, understand that these two pair are correlated, right? They are basically Euro and pound, and then we have the Kiwi, right? So they are basically very, very correlated. So if we're gonna be choosing one of this, right, I would personally choose the pound New Zealand more than the Euro New Zealand. Okay, yeah, so that's my take on these two pairs. Okay, good. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Okay, so very, very quick summary. Let me just jump back to the list. For me personally, okay, I'm looking at the three tech ones, mainly the dollar Canadian, the gold trade, as well as pound Australia, right? So those are the few that I'm personally looking at as of today. Okay, going into the week. Good. So yep, that's all from me for today over here. I hope has been insightful. Okay. So last thing before I can conclude the session over here. Okay. So today's session over here is supported by Everything Trading, right? So they are having a couple of free resources and content that you can actually make full use of. If you have not registered for an account, you can head over to their website, everythingtrading.com. Okay, and of course, if you haven't registered, click sign up. But once you sign up, everything is free, right? Basically, you sign up, you just need to click login. I mean, once you sign up, you have your login details, right? So I'm going to log in from my side and just very quickly show you to help you navigate a little bit on the platform, right? So once you log in, okay, the first thing you're going to see is the dashboard. And of course, there are a couple of different live trading session, okay, conducted by various speakers as well. So for me, I usually conduct every Wednesday and Thursday, but this week I'm not gonna have any session over here. Okay, my session is gonna start next week, Wednesday and Thursday, right? So Wednesday is in Chinese, Thursday is in English. Okay. So there are also other speakers. You can definitely register for them. If you're very new to trading, there's the beginners content that you can look into as well. There's some advanced tools that can make full use as well. Okay. So just want to very quickly bring this up in case if you guys are first time, you do not know about this. Again, all these resources right now are free. You can actually just create for a free account, log in and go and explore. Okay. Yep, so that's all from me for today's session over here. All the best to your trading. Okay, and we'll see you guys in the next session. Yeah. Okay, so see you guys. Bye bye.